Welcome to AM Muscle Maintenance with InShape Fitness. I'm Coach Kim. Today's podcast is a workout, and I call this one Fitness on the Side. We started actually talking a little bit about the vestibular system and about movements that help stabilize the body for better balance, the prevention of falls, and improved quality of life. The cornerstones of functional fitness, sustainable functional fitness, meaning fitness that you can do outside of the scope of a gym sort of workout without equipment, without even shoes on your feet, in fact. So you can do these in your bedroom or in your living room in the mornings or at any point during your day, even in the conference room with the door closed or maybe out in the park. And we talked about this last week in conjunction with the balance routine that we did and some of the stability work that we were talking about last week. But today we're talking about movements that require you to interact with the side of your body, lateral movements and a little bit, not rotational, like tons of rotational twisting movements, but movements where you have to actually turn the body. And that activates your vestibular system, which helps build stability internally, not just with the smaller muscles that stabilize the bigger muscles that help you move forward and move backwards and stop and not fall down and stuff like that, but help you just maintain the high quality of life so that you can do all of the regular things in your life that might be exciting for you, like playing with children on the floor and running around and maybe kicking a soccer ball around in a field, or playing in a playground, or twirling around on a dance floor maybe. Goodness, I actually just read an article in the paper over the weekend about how the people that dance into older age are the healthiest overall people on the planet in terms of long-term health without sort of medical interventions, without pain and suffering, and without a sort of addiction, for lack of a better word, to the gym. So let's begin with a postural systems check. I only have 7 exercises in this exercise routine, so it's not that long, but it will take about 20 minutes. Now that we're going to get moving, we're going to start with the postural systems check, which is how I love to begin exercise regimens. If you're seated, I would encourage you to go ahead and stand up, find a spot on a floor where you can stand up really tall. Your feet are about shoulder width apart, and they should be facing forward. Your toes should face forward. And then think about the position of your feet in its relationship to your floor surface. Hopefully you don't have shoes on your feet. I really think it is very important to kick off your shoes. Don't worry about the dirt on the floor. Just make sure that you aren't standing on, maybe broken glass or whatever if you're outside. But definitely, if you can, just step onto the floor and make contact with the rug or the hardwood or whatever floor surface you have, so that you can feel a sense of whether you're pushing down into the floor with more of your heels. You obviously want to use all 4 corners of your feet. So you're using the balls of your feet, you're using your toes, you're using your heels to stabilize your body. And you don't turn your toes out, which means as you work your way up the body, if you kind of tug with your brain, sort of grip your butt muscles and squeeze your quad muscles, your thighs, you're going to isometrically activate the tissues in your lower limbs. So now think about your hips, your pelvis. You want to make sure that your pelvis is not tilted forward, which is a deviation of proper posture as a result of sitting on your butt all day. I have these funny little personality trait names that I give to 2 body parts. I talk nonstop with my runners about how the quads are the bullies of the body, the bully muscle group, your thighs, because the quads are the biggest of the sort of big muscle groups, and they will do work. They will do the load, like take over and just, say, I got it, basically, to all of the other muscles in the mobility muscles that you need for moving your body forward. And that's not necessarily a good thing because it means that other muscles are underutilized. The back, I call the mensch. So I just make kind of comical names up about things because the mensch also is sort of like doing a lot of the extra work, but doesn't really have the ability to. The back is constantly having to compensate for weaker muscles in the front of your body. And because the butt is so underutilized and so sort of like depressive to me, like the personality trait of it. Someone came up with this over the weekend, actually. We were calling it Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, like the Eeyore of your body, the down in the doldrums, not activated, just sort of slow stimulation kind of part of the body. And the butt really does need to make sure that it, that you get the energy, and you have to drive energy to it by activating it with your brain sometimes. So your pelvis is often tilted forward as a result of being seated all day, and that turns off. It helps. It desensitizes the butt muscle tissue, which is why the butt is so difficult to recruit in activities. All right, now working your way up, you zip up your tummy muscles, make sure that your shoulders are back and that your ears and your shoulders line up vertically. Now take 3 deep breaths for me. To end the postural systems check, we're going to ready the body for a little bit of movement. We're going to do a couple of standing moves. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 standing moves, and then 3 moves on the floor with some stretches at the end. Now, you've taken those deep breaths. You inhale through your nose. You exhale deeply through your mouth. Remember that throughout. You really do want to make sure that you are efficiently exchanging gases in your body. You benefit from the inhaling of oxygen through your nose because the nasal passages have filters that help send the right signals to the central nervous system and thus to the limbs, to your peripheral nervous system, to operate with control, with deliberate movement patterns, and without stress hormones and an otherwise unneeded elevated heart rate. So we inhale through the nose and then get the carbon dioxide out of the body through the mouth. Right? You inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Okay, now the very first thing that we're going to do sounds crazy, but I do want you to try it. Even if you have bad balance and your vestibular system is a little off, just give this a try. We're going to try this in different sort of variations for about a minute. So you're standing up tall. Now I want you to extend your arms out to the sides, palms face down. Keep your back straight. Keep your tummy muscles pulled in and up, like zipped up. Now, turn 180 degrees. Just really fast. Like just turn around. Keep your arms out. Your arms are gonna get heavy. So you want to keep your tummy muscles contracted in order to try to contain that kinetic energy a little bit so that it doesn't overpower you and you don't end up then reflexively giving up and dropping your arms in order to, recalibrate or whatever. Just turn around again, back to the very starting position that you were in, facing the direction you started in, and then repeat that pattern a couple more times. You've only got 10 more seconds with your arms up. That's 60 seconds. I was watching the clock. It goes so fast. I do a turnaround, a spin around 21 times every single morning. It's the very first thing that I do in the morning as soon as I wake up. And it's one of the 5 Tibetans. If you know me and you've seen me face to face in my sessions, I even try to get my 91-year-old client to do this particular move or to at least adopt parts of it. And just in terms of turning the head, the lighthouse exercise, which I use in a lot of my workouts, is similar to this, only you don't move your feet, you just turn your head. But the point of it is to discombobulate your inner ear equilibrium as a function of developing better equilibrium and stability of your vestibular system. And so interacting with what's going on to your right, what's going on to your left is not so easy as you get older. Now, if you're really, really young and you're doing this exercise regimen and you want to spin around really fast, please do it, because that's what I do in the morning. And I'm not really, really young. I'm 50. But 21 times takes about a minute to turn around 21 times really fast. Okay, the next exercise is something called a windmill. We did this just last week. I love this exercise as well. You get to plant your feet double shoulder width apart now, but keep your toes pointed forward, or almost pointed forward. And then lift your arms up over your head and clasp your hands together. Now, your hands become the only pointed component of the turning windmill. So you hinge at your waist in this case, making a big circle where you go down to the right and then all the way down to point your hands towards the floor, and then you lift up to the left, completing that revolution. And you, again, we're only going to do this for about a minute, so that means you don't do that many of them. Complete another revolution, and then another one if you can. Make sure that you keep your body stabilized on the bottom. That means you sort of, your knees are not locked, your legs are straight, but you have a little bit of softness in your knees and you're squeezing the thigh muscles in order to maintain that stability as you're moving your body. Just move slowly, move deliberately, and make sure that you reverse directions and go down to the left and up to the right so that you equal everything out. All right? That is called the windmill. Okay, the next exercise is called the archer's lunge. And the archer's lunge is not really a lunge. We're going to do an actual lateral lunge in a second as well. But the archer's lunge is similar to a 90-degree turn to the right or to the left. Only instead of just turning the head, you're going to turn. So when you turn to the left with your head, your whole body turns to the left, and your left foot takes a step out to the left, also turning 90 degrees, and then you bend the left knee and lower the body slightly straight down as you turn. And I start by having hands on the hips in order to get the bottom half correct. And then if you are interested in performing the upper body portion of what an archer would do, if an archer had to point and shoot a bow and arrow to the left from facing forward, then you can also extend the left arm out straight, and then the right elbow extends out and back, sort of squeezing the shoulder blades together. So let's just do 5 or 6, turning to the left, and then we're going to repeat the same thing by turning to the right. So we call this an archer's lunge just because it's a sort of a beginner's lunge, and there are lots of other sort of next level components that you can add to it. Obviously, you can add, as I said before, the upper body movement. Remember to switch after 5 or 6, turn to the right. Same thing. Your left leg stays still. The right leg turns to the right, taking that big step out where you make a 90-degree angle between the left foot, which is stable, and the right moving foot. And then you bend the right knee. And then if you extend the right hand out to the side as though you were pulling the bow back with your left hand, pulling the string and the arrow back, and about to shoot out to the right. We don't use bows and arrows very much anymore. Archery is a beautiful activity, artistic, beautiful movement associated with that skill. Back in the days of, I talk about my book that is not published yet, but I'm working on it. My book called Darwin on the Treadmill, in the days of Henry VIII. So we're not really talking about all that long ago. I mean, it was the 16th century, so 400 years ago. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of military weapons and all of the various sort of nation building and various population shifts that we've encountered through these last thousands of years, bows and arrows were in use for a really long time. And in the days of Henry VIII and through the 17th century, most boys had to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow. It was their primary sort of weaponry, their primary defense mechanisms in their homes and so on. And I write about in my book the last known military use of the bow and arrow, which, believe it or not, was actually World War II. So that kind of is fascinating, I think. All right, now we're going to do a lateral lunge. So the lateral lunge is an exercise where you, again, keep one leg stable in one position, and you're going to take a big step out. Let's just go back to the left leg moving. The right leg is going to stay stable. And you take a big step out with your left leg, keeping the leg straight, but then bending the right knee and sitting kind of like into a squat, but it's a lateral lunge in that you're going to feel the left inner thigh stretch out as you lower the body straight down. So now you're interacting with gravity a little bit and activating muscles that reside on the side of the body, which is the point of doing exercises that interact with lateral movements and rotational movements, because the outside of the body, your oblique muscles, which we're going to work with on the floor, your IT band and the outside butt muscles, and then your inner thigh muscles are muscles that just don't get worked because we don't have multidimensional movement in our lives anymore. So we want to incorporate these kinds of movements into the regimens that we're doing in our homes in order to maintain that high quality of life as we get older. Again, same thing. We're doing just 5 or 6 of these with the left leg extending out to the side, and then repeat with the same on the right. And that does it for the movements on the floor. So 180 degree or 360 degree turns with your arms extended out to the sides. We have the windmill, the archer's lunge, and the lateral lunge. That's it. Okay, now let's go down to the floor. You're going to lie down on the floor, face up, knees bent, with your butt and your heels pretty close together. All right, so bring your feet close to your butt. Make sure that your feet are straight. You don't want to turn out your toes. And then you lift into a hip bridge and just stay here for a couple seconds and take 3 deep breaths. This exercise is another exercise that forces some of the side movement of your body. And the reason that it does is because the hip bridge is a really, really pretty simple way to stretch out the hip flexors. If you keep your feet flat, you don't want your toes to lift up. You can also activate and stimulate, therefore isometrically stimulate the muscles of the butt and the hamstrings. Really, really sophisticated coaches for surfers. One of the more challenging sports that sort of individual sports that are out there. Surfing coaches use the hip bridge and have surfers stay in this position for 10, 15 minutes and just hold it in order to make sure that, isometrically speaking, which mostly means increased blood flow and neuromuscular stimulation. So they use the hip bridge in a static position. But now if you extend your hand, let's just use one hand at a time here. Your left hand out to the side. Your right hand can stay beside your body with right next to your butt. But your left hand now extends back to or out to the side. Now, what you want to do is keep both feet flat on the floor. But you're going to lift your left arm up off the floor and rotate your whole torso, hand leading the way, across to the right side, touch the floor, make contact with your fingertips in the floor on the other side of your right shoulder, far across the body, and then return to the starting position. And then keep repeating that 5 or 6 times. And then we're going to switch to the other side. Now, what are you going to feel? The leg, when you're twisting to the right with the left hand leading, your left leg is going to feel a little more of the isometric contraction sort of responsibility, if you will. So you're going to feel your left hamstring, you're going to feel your left butt cheek more, but you're rotating the left side of the body and forcing the left tensor fasciae latae and the obliques to activate and move the arm up and over and to the side, and then of course back in the opposite direction. Same thing, of course, in the opposite direction or on the opposite side with the right arm moving over towards the left side of the floor. So we call this a hip bridge reach, and it is a staple in my stability workouts, my maintenance workouts with all the runners that I coach in New York City. So I really do love this. I also do this exercise at least 3 or 4 times a week in order to keep up with all the people that I coach when I'm running, who are running. So this is the hip bridge reach. And again, I love this exercise. Now we're going to simply do a side plank. Side planks we love, and they're, again, isometric contractions. And when you are in prone position and you're facing the floor in a plank position, you're activating this sort of teamwork approach activation of all of the muscles in your trunk. And that is why it is so effective. It is why people do so much work in plank. It's why push-ups are helpful. It's why, exercises related to quadruped, like bird dog movements and kicking movements in prone position, hand taps and reaches and all kinds of different things with the lifting and twisting of your butt. All those are prone positions and moving prone position work that maintains this teamwork approach, activating all of the layers of muscle and forcing them to work together. Now, on the side of your body, if you are on the right-hand side, you're going to put your right shoulder under your right elbow. So don't use your hand for side planks. It's very, very difficult to support your body with weak wrists that we have because we don't do any upper body labor anymore. So use your elbow. Make sure the elbow is in line, straight up and down with the shoulder. And then if you can't hold a plank by stacking your feet and resting on your bottom heel, your bottom foot, then bend your knees behind you, but keep your pelvis straight. Your torso, your tummy, and your thighs should be a straight line. There should be no angle between at the pelvis, where the pelvis and the femur meet each other. So you can bend your knees behind you, and that shortens the lever so that the plank on the side is not so hard. But you should be able to hold 20 seconds or so in plank on either side. I'll go ahead. Once you've completed that, the last thing that we're going to do gets you into downward facing dog. And so once you've finished your side plank on either sides, go ahead and rest in child's pose. Take a couple of deep breaths, and then we'll do the last move together in just a second. Okay. So if you're in child's pose now, you are draping your torso over your thighs, and you're just taking a couple of deep breaths, and we are almost finished. Finishing up in downward facing dog to stretch out the back of the legs, stretch out the butt, stretch your calves and your hamstrings, again, the back of the legs, and a little bit of the back itself. But the last thing is something called a pike sit-through. Pike is the other name we give to downward facing dog. Those of us that are not yoga aficionados, and I am not a yoga aficionado because I have a really hard time sitting still and being Zen-like in any way, shape, or form. I am on the go all the time, pretty much until I collapse at the end of the day. So I don't pull into like this sort of Zen state, the meditative state where I relax in downward facing dog very often. And I certainly don't go into a yoga studio to practice that kind of spirituality ever. But I do love the pike position, so I like calling it pike because it is great for the back of the legs. But a sit-through is where you are in downward facing dog or pike, and you lift up the left foot, not very far, because you bend the left knee a little bit, and then you twist towards the right side slightly, and the left foot extends through the space in between the right leg and the right arm and touches the floor on the other side of the body to the right. And then you go back to the pike plank or the downward facing dog position, static, and pause again. Okay, so take a deep breath in and then repeat that again. Lift up the left foot, twist, turn towards the right, and then extend the left foot through the space between the right foot and the right hand out to the right side. Tap the floor with your toe and then go back to downward facing dog or pike. Repeat it again. And we're going to once again go to about 5 or 6 and then switch sides. Now, I know that I offer a ton of editorial through these podcast workouts. So hopefully, as we do them together, you get a sense for all of the commentary that I like to offer. And then you just keep doing the exercises or go back and do previous exercises and benefit in general from all of this committed time that you have to your own health, because it is so important that we think about the consequences of living in sedentary sort of spaces where, I know that if you work for a really big company, you might have access to luxurious services, campus services related to fitness centers and spa services and all that other kind of stuff. But we know that the majority of the working public in the United States, at least, work in small businesses where you're really tied to your desk a lot, or tied to, some other kind of seated type of situation where you're tied to being in the car for long periods of time, and then tied to being at a desk, or tied to, maybe driving a school bus or driving some other kind of public transportation. You're seated way too much is the point. You are sitting on your butt way too often. And, look, gyms are part of the culture of this country. Fancy studios, cheap studios, really, really high-end spa, fitness, uber cool facilities. There used to be one in New York City that even turned into a nightclub at night. And then there are, really sort of inexpensive rec centers and YMCAs and those kinds of things. All of that is part of our culture, and that's fine. But if you wake up in your morning and you can get up just a few minutes early and spend 10, 15, in this case, we're going to be closing out here at like half an hour, that little bit of time on your body before you have to hit the first thing on your calendar of the day, you're going to develop an acuity, a mastery, a sense of mastery for taking care of yourself, having agency over your own health that will provide you the freedom, deshackle you from the idea of having to go to the gym, provide you the freedom of enjoying your life at a higher quality of life without the pain, the back pain when you first wake up in the morning, without popping the Advil or popping, drinking that extra cup of coffee because you don't have any energy or whatever it is. There is a way to sustain your life without all of those, those added sort of necessities that we've come to really rely on. But it definitely takes a little bit of learning and some practice and certainly some teaching. And I'm happy to be the one that's providing that for you. So thank you so much for joining me. And I will post the 7 exercises on the InShape Fitness blog, bodybyInShape.com. If you want to go and take a look at them in writing, I'll put a quick little description of each of these exercises there. But let me know if you have any questions. I can be reached at bodybyInShape.com or on social media at InShape Fitness NYC on Facebook, and I think it's just InShape Fitness on Twitter. So have a great rest of the day, and I will be talking about, I'll do the InShape Fitness Show podcast. We'll be talking about the bow and arrow and how some of the other sort of Renaissance activities of of years that have sort of disappeared from, or in the history books, but have disappeared from our lives might be valuable, and not necessarily coming back in terms of their utility of our current lives, but understanding how beneficial something like the total body use of the bow and arrow is a really interesting study, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the week on the In Shape Fitness Show. Have a great day.